So hi and welcome to this second session of In Therapy Unpacked with me, Anna Duschinsky. I have been working with Alex for 20 odd years, and together we've developed the therapeutic coaching modality. And so what I'm doing in these sessions is unpacking how Alex is working in the sessions he's doing in therapy. Specifically here, looking at the sessions he's been doing with Paul. Now, a couple of things to say. First is obviously if you haven't watched the first of these, please go back and watch that because this will make a lot more sense with that context. Also, because Paul is dealing with a really tragic loss of his daughter, there are themes of suicide and grief which can be triggering. So please be aware of that in watching this session today. This session 2 is actually a composite of a couple of sessions with Paul. So we may be covering more themes and slightly jumping between them in a way that wasn't quite so true in the first session, just so you're aware of that. Okay.
One of the things that we talked a bit about last time was your relationship to that little boy within you. Wow. And your relationship to your feelings and emotions, and the way that you learned to survive as a little boy was just to numb and to shut it down. Mm. And, you know, we talked about how he's not the problem. Your rejecting of him is the problem. Mm. And I know that landed with you. And I'm curious as to, I'm sure you've thought about that, and I'm curious as to what's come from your reflections.
So a nice way back in, they've built rapport, they've gone quite deep. Session 1, how do we re-establish that? Well, Alex is doing that by recapping essentially the key elements of what they discovered together, the impact that it had on Paul in that first session. It creates a couple of things. It creates a continuity, and it actually tracks both of them back into obviously that subject matter, but also into the relationship, into the inquiry that they're in together. So it's a beautiful way of re-establishing that frame, that container, that safety together. And the other thing that's interesting there is Alex's invitation for Paul to just let him know what's happened since. I think sometimes practitioners can go into a next session kind of thinking, great, we'll pick up from where we were, and forget that there's been a week or two perhaps in between where the client's evolved. And we need to establish what's happened in that interim time frame as well, so that we're both on the same page.
There was sadness, loneliness. I was very lonely because I shut myself off. I completely shut myself off. I do remember
when you were 3. You mean?
I don't know. I think we're a bit older than that.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I may have been 4 or 5.
Okay.
But I do remember getting presents and hiding under the dining room table in the corner, because the table was pushed in the corner when no one was using it, and used to get dragged out when everyone come round. And I'd literally play under the table on my own and hide, and I isolated myself from everything. Even when people were trying to give me comfort, I would push them away.
Why do you think you did that?
I suppose because I didn't want to feel. Didn't want to feel the emotions. As I said to you before, opening Pandora's box. That's what it was all. So I was learning to lock it away all them years ago.
What do you believe about that little boy? And I know that that he's important. We've had some, but historically, what's been the narrative that you've told yourself about him?
He's a pain in the fucking arse.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, it was a pain in the arse.
Yeah, and why? Why is he a pain in the arse?
Because he's fucking like forever. He's forever attention seeking. He's like, oh, it's a fucking change the record. For goodness sake, it happened like years ago. What's your fucking problem?
Right.
We've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, ate the sandwich, got the book, written the book. Come on.
So he's attention seeking.
Yeah.
He's needy.
Yeah, fucking right, yeah.
He's complaining.
It's like he's a bitch.
He's weak.
Yeah.
He's a bitch.
Yeah, he's a bitch, a little bitch. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I don't want him around. I just don't. He's been locked under that table. Like, he's been under that table for a long time.
Yeah, 57 years.
Fuck, I just realised something. What happened if I let him out of the table?
Okay. So what we have here is, in asking the question, what's happened in between time? When we start by mapping what's happened, so what happened last session, for example, it's often at quite a cognitive level, quite a conscious level. In therapeutic coaching, we talk about the three bodies: the mental body, emotional body, physical body, past, present, future, conscious and unconscious. So if you look at where we often start, and certainly where Alex and Paul started, it was primarily about what's happening in the present, at a conscious level, which was how he was feeling and the kind of intolerability of what was going on for him. And then beginnings of an exploration of where that came from in the history into the past. In the interim, what's happened is that because of that container, because that frame's been set, Paul has been able to engage a bit more with the emotions of that inner child. So he starts by saying, well, what he's recognized is the sadness, the loneliness of that little boy. So there's more emotional connection already to that inner child than there was before. The second thing that's happened is he's clearly started to have a specific memory come up around the little boy being given presents but hiding under the table. And that is again indicative that we've dropped from it being at a very conscious level to a deeper layer, deeper into the kind of layers of the unconscious, which is where those memories are stored. So he's more emotionally connected and he's tapping into something at a deeper level of consciousness where memory is coming up. What's really interesting about that is it means that Paul's operating now at a different level in terms of his relationship to this inner child, this past self. Alex has given him the space to begin to explore this. He's asked what his historical relationship was with that little boy. And it's very clear from what Paul says that he very much kept him under the table, was very harsh, very critical, very judgmental of that little boy. So we've got these two things. We've got this metaphor of this little boy who's been kept under the table. And because we're no longer at a purely conscious, linear, logical level, Paul's beginning to explore, and Alex is giving him the space to explore and kind of develop that metaphor. The next obvious, or a logical, if you like, not in a conscious way, but a logical development of that little boy under the table is Paul's recognition of, well, hang on, I've kept him under the table. What happens if I let him out? And you can see the impact that has on him. What's key here is Alex has prompted, asked some questions, but given him space to explore. And out of that comes this very natural flow of recognition and realization and almost evolution of his relationship to this inner self.
Well, what do you fear would happen?
I don't know. I have no fucking idea what would happen. There's a smile coming up on my face as if to say, well, this
You're
will
quite
be
curious to find out.
Yeah, I'm very curious. This will be interesting. It's like he's been stopped. Fuck. I've just let him out the table and I've just let him wander over and sit inside me. So he's sitting inside me now.
Okay.
Right now.
So what's that like right now? If you just give space to your body and to him and to how you feel, what's that?
Beautiful piece from Alex. We talk about moving from the cognitive more into the kind of emotional, physiological, because of course that's where a lot of healing happens. We need the cognitive frame. We need that rapport with the conscious mind to be able to feel safe, to drop deeper. And that's clearly what's happened here. Paul has dropped deeper. He's more in connection with that inner self. And he takes the boy from being locked under the table or, stuck under the table and actually progresses that metaphor so that now he's aware of bringing the boy inside of himself, integrating it inside of himself, all of which has just happened by giving him space and giving him a safe container and the context, or kind of safe context and understood context of what's happening. What Alex then does is, in reference to that, ask Paul to reflect on what that's like in the body. So again, reinforcing that shift from the cognitive down into the emotional physiology of embodying that shift and change in relationship to the younger self. What's that like in the body? What's this experience of it?
It doesn't make any sense, but it feels grown up. I don't know why it feels grown up.
Say more.
It's like a coming together of two halves that have been separated, and we can work together with this. This is, mutual respect, consideration.
Okay.
There's consideration. It's like a curious consideration. Okay. So how will this work? So it's questions. It's more than anything. It's questions.
Your historical relationship to him, and you were using words like, he's an irritation, he's annoying, he's needy, he's
a bitch.
And my suggestion is that he was a needy, upset, devastated little boy, but your father had his own grief, and your stepmom hadn't lost anyone. So she wasn't going through it. There's this angry, irritable, upset, needy child playing under the table. And it's not to excuse people's behavior, but their narrative about you became your narrative about him.
Okay, a couple of really key points here. So first, this beautiful evolution of his relationship to the inner child has happened through creating a safe space for it to happen. And yet, Alex doesn't spend too much time on that. He actually points back to what was there only moments ago, which was that very harsh, judgmental narrative that Paul had around that inner child. So it's interesting. I think a lot of practitioners might at this point have spent more time developing, evolving this new kind of relationship to the younger self, this new integration, which is all really beautiful and positive. But what Alex kind of points to is, well, hang on, that's great, that's beautiful. What about that? What about the way in which you've treated yourself all this time until now? Within therapeutic coaching, one of the things, one of the ways I like to describe it is that we develop relationships to these inner parts of us, and they're kind of like relationships to people, exact relational kind of dynamics that are going on. Paul's developing a much healthier relationship to his inner child. But until 10 minutes ago, the narrative for years and years and years has been harsh, judgmental, and deeply, deeply critical. So it's very likely that unless we address that kind of elephant in the room, that's going to continue to come back and be something that plays out. So Alex is acknowledging this shift that's happened, but also pointing to, well, let's address this as well. Let's talk about that old narrative, how that played out, so that there's more of an integration there.
But the truth is, he was a little boy that lost his mum.
Yeah, he was.
And he was upset, and he was angry, and he was defensive.
And now I can relate to him because I lost my kid.
Right.
So 2 key points here. The first is we model and we take the belief systems from those around us and we integrate them as our own belief systems when we're young. That's one of the key ways that we develop belief systems about the world and about ourselves. Sometimes we update those as we go and as we grow, but sometimes we don't, which means we can be left with that internalized sense of how everyone else saw us, or we believed they saw us, based on their responses to us or based on their emotional cues. And we've internalized that and kept that. And that's what's happened here. Or that's what Alex is pointing to, is actually the narrative that Paul perceived others had about him as that 4-year-old. That he was irritating, his emotions were needy and annoying and in the way, and he should just get over them. Whether or not that was actually ever said, we don't know. But certainly that was his sense of how he was seen, and he internalized that. And he internalized that from the people around him. And the reframe here that's so crucial is actually that little boy was just needy and devastated and in need emotionally and grieving, which is a really key reframe. For Paul to recognize that actually he was just devastated. Then Paul makes the link to, and actually now I know what it's like to be devastated as an adult. I can relate to how he felt, probably for the first time. Really, he actually relates to his own younger grief because of his adult grief. So it weaves all of these pieces back together, where before there was this kind of sense of integration of a new relationship, but everything else was not yet aligned and integrated. Alex's questioning around these pieces brings it all together.
I know what he feels like.
Right.
And this is worse.
I think the pain of losing his mum was overwhelming, but what made it so traumatic was that he felt alone in his pain.
Yeah. No one understood him.
And he wasn't allowed to have his pain.
He couldn't grieve for her because he was too young at the time. When he was old enough, he wasn't allowed to grieve. So he never got to grieve for her. That's why it's so hard now. Because
Well, you're grieving your mother and your daughter at the same time.
Yeah.
Everything they've done to this point has allowed Paul now to drop into both that young grief and, of course, the more recent tragedy and that loss, and to actually feel it. It's taken that work, that scaffolding, that mapping, that understanding, that building of the relationship to the younger self for him to get to a point where he can embody and actually feel this grief.
I'm sorry, Ben.
I don't even apologise. I want you to recognise that it's these moments where the feelings are there. This is the work. The understanding of it and the making sense of it is helpful, but the actual work is letting your body, your emotional body, do what it knows how to do. The issue has been you holding on and you blocking that, as opposed to letting the wisdom of your emotional body heal.
Alex's reference back now to this is what Paul needed to hear as a kid and what he needs to hear now, which is that this is a safe and appropriate experience, that his body has wisdom. That's such a key presupposition. We don't need to cognitively understand this now. The kind of presupposition being that if we allow the wisdom of the body, it knows how to heal.
So your job in working with this is to give yourself permission. Not to try and force it, not to try and control it, not to try and fix it, but to give yourself permission to feel how you feel.
Alex is referencing here something that we call the emotional defenses. So over years of working with people, we recognised that people have these different kind of flavours and styles, often multiple ways that they defend against feeling. We know why we don't feel, everything we've said in the last couple of these sessions, which is about feeling shamed of it, not having been given space, not having been taught how to feel our emotions, and therefore not knowing how or feeling safe to actually feel them. So we learn to protect, we learn to defend against our emotions in lots of different ways. And Alex is referencing a few here, fixing it, we're not feeling it, we're fixing it instead, trying to control it. We often try and analyse or distract, avoid, all these ways that we develop mechanisms to not feel our feelings.
So it's a day after the second session, and I can say I've felt a real shift inside me. There's excuse me. I feel a lot more peaceful and calm. And it's sad, really, that I'd effectively downtrodden that little inner child in me for a long time and bullied him in a way. That's how it felt. Never let him feel and heal. That seems to be different today, and I feel very optimistic. So, good day today.
And a beautiful reflection from Paul that actually, even though all of those defense mechanisms that we build to not feel are in theory designed to keep us safe, to protect us, actually they create tension, they create dysregulation. And it's when we create a safe space to feel that we can often resolve that suffering and feel more at peace. At this point, we shift into the next session. And so the themes shift slightly as there's a kind of progression.
interesting things have cropped up. That integration of that young lad, and homework was interesting.
Yeah, so the homework was looking at the ways that you've learned to not feel your feelings. So I'm curious as to what you identified.
The obvious one was, to me, was distraction.
Yes.
Regularly distracting. And it goes back to school and stuff like that. I can remember doing that at school and causing distractions and deliberately getting sent out of class. And so I'd find myself not understanding something and, bang, there's a little switch in my head. And
Paul explains that having undiagnosed dyslexia as a child made him feel weak and stupid as a result of how adults related to him. Not only has this had a big influence on how he relates to himself to this very day, it's also been the source of much anger and resentment.
So there's a place in you that feels delicate, and the response to that is to shut down and switch off. What would happen if you didn't shut down or switch off, and you were just to give a little bit of space to the feeling?
So what we see here is an evolution. Paul's, as we know, beginning to rebuild this relationship with his inner self. And through doing that, actually, we're uncovering another layer. So the inquiry that Alex set for homework around his kind of tendencies in avoiding emotion has opened up this another layer, slightly older school-age child who has internalized another view of himself. Not just, emotions are needy and weak and not okay and irritating, but actually that he is in some way weak and stupid. And again, Alex is referencing back to the same way that they sat with that in session 2 and saying, okay, well, what if we sit with that? What if rather than distracting, you were to sit and make space for that? Then what comes through?
I'm getting angry.
Okay. What does the anger feel like?
Little kid in the corner.
Yeah.
So it just sounds stupid, right? Just wants his mummy.
Yeah. He's a 5 or 6 year old boy that 2 or 3 years ago lost his mum. And he's struggling he's struggling with some learning challenges. And people are misunderstanding him. And what he needs, not what he wants, what he needs is his mum to hold him and tell him that she loves him as he is. And it sounds like he didn't get that, or you didn't get that.
It's funny, I'm looking back at it now thinking, wow, if I had have had some better coping mechanism at the time, then I could have lived up to the potential as a kid and then not felt so stupid as an adult. Because, everyone's smarter than me, got qualifications on the wall, or, they were. I wanted to matter as a child, so I didn't feel I mattered. It's a bit stupid, really, I suppose.
Well, hang on a second. I'll pull you up on that.
All right, okay.
Is it stupid for a child to want to matter?
So here we have a real encapsulation of what Paul is playing out. So he's internalized this narrative. In this instance, he's stupid. And Alex has offered a new, much more healthy understanding of what went on. So Paul's narrative for all of these years has been, well, everyone else around me was more intelligent. They've got qualifications on the wall. I don't matter. Alex's reframe around that is actually you were a little boy who was still grieving and who needed his mum and who needed someone to tell him that he was okay. That in a way, he's offering the parenting that Paul didn't get, offering a reframe around how Paul saw himself that he, bless him, should have had at that point in time and didn't get. Alex offers now. What's really interesting here is Paul accepts that and says, yeah, and with that, if I'd had better coping strategies, different ways of seeing myself, I might have fulfilled my potential, might not have grown up stupid. I wanted to matter. And then so quickly, he flips straight back into stupid, really. He's both seeing the narrative and acting out the narrative at the same time. But at least there's growing consciousness of how toxic those belief systems about himself have been. Also interesting how insidious and how prevalent that narrative is, because even in talking about it, he's playing it out.
I sometimes have a problem looking back, thinking, like you're 60 now, for fuck's sake, you know, this should have been dealt with. And
well, let me introduce you to another part of your psyche, Paul. That's what we call your inner critic,
right?
And that's the voice that we all have. That voice,
yeah.
And that's the voice which is constantly picking on us, judging us, telling us off, and really judging our value as a human being by meeting a hidden set of guidelines and principles of how we should or shouldn't be.
In naming this inner critic, what that often does is increase our visibility of it. So this is the theme here, really. You can see how, as I mentioned before, this is threading through everything. Alex naming it, giving it a kind of a title, the inner critic, begins to enable us often to actually see it and catch it and not buy in, which is, of course, what's so toxic, is that we buy in and we believe those kind of judgments of ourselves.
And what often happens is when we start to become a bit more open and a bit more vulnerable, our inner critic beats up on us to try and put things back the way they were before. And that's the piece that we want to work on. Because to really heal what's happened, it has to be allowed to move.
So she's a couple of days after my last session, inner critic, incessant in my head.
Isn't it interesting how with that label, with that recognition, Paul's beginning to notice how prevalent that is?
Constantly having to pull it back and say, look, not now, not now, not now. I haven't been rude, I haven't told it to her off or anything like that. I just want to just keep it, just aware of it and just pull it back. And it's made me feel a lot better than I did before, because now I'm not beating myself up so much. But the great thing is awareness is a wonderful thing. Once you're aware of something, then you can do something about it.
I felt like last time with the inner critic, that was an important recognition for you. And I really appreciated kind of how quickly you got on it. I was curious as to how that's been since then, because I sort of get by the look of your face, I sort of get the impression it's like open Pandora's box in terms of suddenly seeing it everywhere. So I'm curious as to how that's been.
I had a really big realization this morning that they got it wrong, not me. I wasn't thick. I just couldn't do what they asked, which was read something or write something. Spelling was wrong. So it looked like I couldn't be bothered. Because I'm intelligent.
Yeah.
They knew that, but I wasn't doing what they asked.
Yeah.
And I thought, fuck, if they've got it wrong, that's a massive, massive shift.
Labelling the inner critic, naming it, seeing it, begins to give us distance from it. That's what Paul was referencing in his little video to camera a moment ago. Actually, this feels better. Partly, of course, because he's just not beating himself up all the time. But also it begins to offer up space for a new narrative, a new story about himself. And this, of course, is so critical for his sense of self.
In how I see myself.
Yeah. I think what also happened was at the time of our lives when we're learning who we are and like what is our value and what are we capable of, you learn things about yourself that you believed for decades to be true that you now realize weren't true. And I think what you're saying is your inner critic has weaponized all of that narrative and then used it as ammunition to constantly throw back at you.
Yeah.
And in some ways, a lot of your life has been the attempt of that part of you to prove that they were wrong.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
The challenge is having to fight to feel your self-worth.
Yeah.
That place of striving. What does the little boy feel? What would he want to say right now to those people?
He doesn't want to say anything. He just see. That's what he wants to say, see. But he'd like an apology, but he's not going to get that, is he?
What if he says, fuck off, I showed you, but look at the price I paid?
Oh, fucking hell. I could have done so much more.
What's key here is there's been a big recognition that that inner story that Paul's always told himself, that inner critic, has been wrong. What Alex again is drawing Paul back to is the emotion of that younger self and the emotion of how it has been through his life to live with that sense of inferiority, belief in his own stupidity, belief in his own weakness, and the constant fight against that, and how it is to have carried that, as Alex says, the cost. So again, there's this strong, cognitive recognition. What Alex is doing is continuously bringing Paul back into a felt sense of the impact of that, historically and in the moment. And here, I could have done so much more, and the obvious emotion that Paul's experiencing is crucial.
When he was younger. But he just realised.
And you struggled a lot to do what you did.
Yeah. Took a lot out of me. Took a lot out of me.
What do you feel right now?
I was sort of relieved in a way, because we've recognised the fact that that kid knows it wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
It's a relief.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
And it's not his fault.
Alex's reiteration of that, it's not your fault, it's not his fault. The words that little boy needed to hear when he couldn't write, when he was grieving, couldn't come out of the table, from under the table, the words Paul's able to say to himself, Alex reiterating back to him, and Paul being able to receive that now as an adult, is a really important moment. It does two things. One is that it allows Paul to, for the first time, hear someone say that to him. Having built this relationship with Alex, to hear that is significant because no one's ever said that to him before. The second thing it does when we feed those words back to our client, their own words, it allows the client to hear them more deeply in themselves and for them to land. It's not your fault.
No.
And it's also, it's okay that you care.
So this is after day 4, session 4 with Alex, and I'm out walking the dog this morning down by the river, and got me thinking, wow, what a massive shift that was yesterday. Having realised after all these years, it wasn't my fault. I didn't let myself down, they let me down. And once that sunk in, wow, I just realised that things will never be the same again, because it just feels so different this morning, so different. I think it could be one of them days where your life changes. We'll just have to wait and see. We've obviously got another 4 sessions to go. I'm sure we got some more stuff to dig around at, but I'm feeling really good today. Really good.
Paul said it. When we are able to see these internal unconscious narratives, so much of this work is bringing what's unconscious into conscious awareness, what's deep and buried in the body, in the emotional body, into more awareness, so that we can tangibly, actively feel it, see it, hear it in ourselves. Then we're able to change, then we're able to create transformation. And really summarizing, I guess, everything that's happened across session 1 and 2 is, that mapping, that understanding, that clarity, that conscious cognitive awareness allows that dropping deeper into the deeper layers of unconscious emotional awareness that actually embody change and transformation. And as Paul says, when that really lands, it's life-changing. So thank you so much for watching. I'll be back looking at the next session with Paul in the next video of this series. So please do join me for that. If you're enjoying looking at how we unpack this and how we work with therapeutic coaching and you want to learn more, please do go to therapeuticcoaching.com and you can book a discovery call to find out more about our training and the course. So I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.